But as I did this organizing, I began to realize how, and I knew this in college, but it became abundantly clear to me as a national staff person and an organizer, is that we lived in a ghetto. Catholics lived in a ghetto and wanted to live in a ghetto. What do I mean by that? They really felt like they had to sort of circle the wagons and keep our young from being contaminated by other religions, by other political persuasions, because the job of Catholic education was to produce an unwavering Catholic that would go forward into the next generations. And it was never to raise any questions, certainly not about the church and its role in some of these issues. And so the struggle in those days was, why not join the National Student Association? That sounds like a strange thing today, but then there was this big network of colleges and universities that joined the National Student Association, developed policies around the issues of the day: racism, international relations, war and peace, poverty to an extent.
Federal education.
Yeah, just basic kind of things. And we couldn't get Catholic colleges to join. And that's something we felt was important, because we have to get out of the ghetto. Because our job was to be yeast in the world and not to sort of be a lump of bread that doesn't have any yeast, which sort of was the role of Catholics in society. Often, now there were definitely people who were exceptions and who were out there. So I don't want to make it sound like it was all that bad. And so I was shaped to be a critical thinker, a critical learner, but I really, really didn't come flat up against it until, from the national staff of YCS, I was recruited to join the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. Has anybody heard of that? See, this is what I tell my civil rights class at Colorado College. You have been denied a legacy of the role of youth, especially students, in changing history in this country, because they teach you that Martin Luther King was the head of the be-all and the end-all of the civil rights movement, and he was not. It's people your age who are out there, as young as 15, out there. But I'll talk a little more about that as I go on. So here I am going to do the circuit riding on different college campuses and talking to people about the civil rights movement. Did you know there was a freedom ride? They burned the bus. There were students on it. Don't you think you should be, supporting this? If you don't want to go on the freedom ride, would you raise money for these organizations that are working in the South to try to break apartheid? And that's what we had. Don't ever let the history books tell you we just had sort of segregation in the South. It was apartheid, and meets every criteria of what apartheid was. And so the people, trying to break that up were A, the local people, and B, the students who came to join them as partners, under the leadership of the local people. Students may have gone to Harvard, Howard, I went to Alverno, but we were taught that we were to be under the leadership of those people who were the most oppressed. We didn't know anything. We were ignorant. And we were to be taught by people who this society considered as ignorant. So, however, I make it sound easy. Oh yeah, she jumped and went down there. No. I'm sitting in Green Bay in a bunk in a student dorm, and I've got this letter. It's been in my suitcase for 2 months. And it says, we'd like you to come down and work for SNCC in the Atlanta office. Well, that's fairly safe compared to working in Mississippi, in Alabama. Anybody see Eyes on the Prize in any history class in your high school?
The movie Eyes on the
There's
Prize.
several, there's like 10 or 12.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so, I'm sitting in this bunk bed saying, I really don't want to go. And then there's a part of me saying, you've been going around to college campuses for 18 months now. You've been exhorting students that they need, if not to go south, to raise money for this, to raise consciousness, put it in the school newspaper, write your congressmen and your legislators, and you're not going to go? I'm saying, yeah, but I'm scared. Because it's like, you either faced beatings or you faced bugs. And let me tell you, they have some mean bugs down. They got cockroaches that fly, and they fly into your hair, and it is just petrifying. So, I really didn't want to go, but then I felt really ashamed of myself because I didn't want to go. So I finally kind of beat myself and went. and thought, well, I'll be safe in Atlanta. At least it's a city, I'm not gonna have to be working with these rural sheriffs that wanna kind of string you up or put you in jail forever. Well, that changed when they asked me to be a part of this. There were these kids, and the sit-ins just sort of sprang up in 61 or 62. Some of them started actually in 60.
You may not know what sit-ins are.
I saw some heads nodding. Do you know what? Okay. So here's kids, let's say Greensboro, North Carolina, where it started. College kids who said, we can't go downtown to the dime store. You know what a dime store is? It's kind of like a Walgreens today. But they had a lunch counter usually, and they wouldn't serve black people there. So these kids decided, we're just going to go sit in. And it kind of spread. They started it, and then students in other colleges started it, but there was a whole nonviolent training program that went with it. So it was very disciplined, very organized. And then young high school kids started doing it. They just started doing it topsy-turvy without the organization and without the sort of discipline about it. And they were put in jail, some of them were badly beaten. And so SNCC and another organization decided, let's pull some of these leaders together in the summer and train them. So we did that, and that's where I met someone who had worked in Selma, Alabama, and said, when he learned that I was involved in YCS, he didn't know what YCS was, he was a Baptist, but he knew I was, worked in the Catholic. I was a Catholic, and had actually done this, staffing work after college he said, there's a French-Canadian priest in Selma. He's the only one that's opened his church to the movement. The black ministers are so afraid of the sheriff, who was a horrible man. I mean, the man would he'd burn a church before he'd let there be a civil rights movement there, meeting. But this priest said, yeah, you can use the school building for voter, registration classes. This is a time when no black people could vote. You just couldn't. You could go down and you could try and take the test. You could be a teacher and take the test, and they would flunk you. Because your place as a black person is not to vote. Politics belong to white people. The economy belonged to white people. The lunch counter belonged to white people, as did restaurants. So they asked me if I would go to Selma, and I said, no way I am going to Selma. I'm supposed to come and work in the Atlanta office, and they really need me there. And they said, we really need you in Selma, and we'll take care of the logistics of it. So I find myself then going to Selma and working there. And let me just kind of collapse the rest of my 5 or 6 years in Alabama and Mississippi to say that, my idea of culture got turned on its head because I was trained or educated to believe that culture was the ballet and the opera and the symphony. And going into the Deep South and learning from African American people a kind of culture, their stories, some of which went back to Africa that had been passed down from their ancestors who were slaves who brought these stories over. Some whose ancestors had brought over from Africa certain seeds so that they would be talking about the kinds of actually African-based crops that they were growing in the Mississippi Delta, had healing kinds of practices and herbs that they used, had actually material arts like quilting and things. It's like I was learning about culture in a different way. I was learning about leadership in a different way. Instead of it being a well-educated teacher or a minister who was to lead the movement, the student movement said, no, it is the cotton picker that's going to speak for this movement, not the teacher. Because they're the ones who know the most about what this system has